We are looking at childhood memories in our communication today. Thanks to Ida, who has joined us with Randy and Shelley. We are here to talk about at least one memory or one trigger from something that happened in your past that you are willing to share with the audience. Welcome, everyone.
Hello.
Hello.
Well, I'm gonna quickly start. I'm gonna jump in here. As a kid, I got a couple of things, but this one just came to me. This is a pot lid. And what I loved to do when I was a kid is I would go into my mom's cupboards and I would always grab the pot lids and I would pretend that I was a bus driver because this was my steering wheel, right? So that was one of the memories I remember from the past. It was the pot lid. So I have a picture that I can share later on, but I thought I'd start with that just to kind of kick things off on a light foot.
Perfect.
Very cute. Very cute.
Thank you.
So I'm going to start if that's okay.
Go for it. Your camera is a little crooked. You're kind of off to one side. Can we square
Am I?
There you go.
Is that better? Do you want me in the middle?
I want you in the middle. Yeah. That's
okay. There.
Perfect. Beautiful. Carry on.
Okay. So first of all, look at my beautiful necklace.
Saw it on your video yesterday. That was awesome.
This woman makes these things. I don't know how she does it. She weaves them through stone. Like that's a whole stone that she's woven in there. Anyway, excuse me. So here is the picture. First of all, I'm going to show you what I wrote on the back as a small child. Can you see it?
Ugly?
Yes.
Ugly.
Yes. And here is the picture.
Oh,
can you see?
Come on. That's beautiful.
So I want to say something about this little person.
Mm-hmm.
This was grade 4, so I would have been 9 years old. And this is when behaviors started to surface. Looking back now as an adult, looking back at her and remembering, this is when I can clearly see behaviors started that would be an indication of like neglect and things like that. So prior to this age, my clothes were made by my mother, who dressed me identical to my sister, who's 3 years older, which I hated. I didn't have an identity of my own. I had to be her sidekick. And remnants of that is the headband. The headband is something my mother made, and my sister had one identical. Yep. But this is where I started to break out, you know? I started getting clothes, probably my brothers, handed down to me because there were 6 of us. So I'm going to tell off the cuff 2 stories about this age that will give you an indication that the things that I'm going to tell you were not normal for a 9-year-old, okay? First one is I hated going outside in the winter because my parents, my mother, would automatically need a break from 6 kids, which were, she had 6 of us in 9 years. So you can imagine how close we were, right? And how she didn't have enough hands or eyes in the back of her head. So she would literally open the door, and we lived on a farm, and make us all go outside in the winter. And I can remember sitting there with a snowsuit on, hating every minute of it, okay? So at school, I thought I'm going to create a story so I don't have to go outside for recess in the winter. And I created the story with my teacher, Miss Sici was her name. I can even remember her. She was Hungarian. And I told her that I had overheard the doctor telling my parents that I had a bug eating my heart. And that I needed to stay inside because I was sickly with this bug eating my heart. And you can imagine what a teacher would do, right? She'd be thinking, what the hell? So she said, how do you know that you have a bug eating your heart? And I said, well, because I overheard the doctor tell my mother. So she said, oh, we better call your mother then. And I said, no, 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 no. It would break her heart, right? And so that story lasted for the rest of the day, so I didn't have to go out for recess. But then she had to stay with me in the classroom. So that was part of the bargain. She didn't get to be with all the other teachers, right? So you can see the inventiveness and imagination of like manipulation and trying to get out of something. But more importantly, the story of a bug eating my heart.
Yes.
You know,
Yeah.
like that is heartbreak to me. Like my heart is being eaten alive.
Mm-hmm.
So that's story number one. Story number two with this cute little thing is we had a snowstorm and we lived in the country on a farm. The nearest school was probably 20 miles from the farm. So we had to take a bus. There was a snowstorm and I missed the bus. So rather than even pondering calling my parents, because we only had one car and my father was using it for work, I walked 20 miles home in a snowstorm at 9 years of age.
Wow.
And the weirdest thing was another bus that was taking kids to a different school found me in the snowstorm. I was soaking wet. I was wearing an orange pumpkin colored coat and you could see me in the snowstorm, right? She pulled over and said, get in. Now I can just remember her saying, get in. So I got on the bottom steps of the bus, you know, and she said, take off your pants down there. You're soaking wet. And I didn't know any of the kids because it was a different school. And she went out of her way off the route and took me right to my doorstep. Do you know that I don't remember my parents' reaction at all? It just seemed like another day. So talk about neglect, right? Talk about neglect. So look at her smiling there. It seems tentative. Do you see a tentative smile there?
Yeah.
Yeah. So those are two memories of that year that
Wow.
stood out to me. So now you know a little bit more about this neglected child who grew up into this adult woman and what I may be carrying from back then with just those two stories.
Hey, Randy, go ahead.
Well, a little bit of what you're carrying, which is a beautiful thing, is your undying independence. You're going to damn well walk instead of doing anything else, and you'll frickin' well go to school when you want to go to school. You were self-governing right from there on, Ida. That's what I recognized.
Yeah, that's the positive spin. But my parents had such a hard time with that. They felt so out of control with me. So they were trying to control me so desperately because they felt so out of control with my independent spirit. And just add a little chunk on that, 2 or 3 days ago, I ran into an ex-sister-in-law. So one thing I want to tell you, my brothers all, no, without, Andre's never been married. My two brothers have both been married twice, right? And now we're no longer with that spouse, but with other women. And so this, all of them still keep our last name. It's so weird. They want to belong to our family. I think from the outside, it looks like we're this great Italian family and whatever, but internally living it was not so good. So she sees me in the plaza and I knew that it was her and I didn't want to talk to her, but she drove up to my car, rolled the window down, and says, how are you doing? And I don't like her, right? She's a gossip and all that. So I'm like, oh God, what am I going to say to this woman? So we start, I hate COVID. She's telling me, I hate this, I hate that. And I said, well, you know, I bet you if everybody stopped wearing their masks, you would see this soon disappear. And so this is how she responded. I do what I'm told, which just made me feel like, oh, fuck. So I said, I don't. And she said, I know, you never have, in a very horrible way. So I rolled up the window and well, before I rolled up the window, I said to her, and why change now? See you. I rolled up the window.
That's beautiful.
So there you go. There's a bit of my story.
I love it. I love
Thank you.
well, right, Ren. She is very much like that. Your persona is so much like that. It's like, this is what I'm going to do, and this is how I'm going to do it, and you guys can go do whatever the hell you want to.
And they did, and I did too.
I love it.
So, you know, I wrote a piece today based on that expression. I do what I'm told. So I wrote beside it, I do what I'm told is a programming, right? It is, it's a programming. And so the word that I woke up with today, have you heard of this word? Abnegation.
Nope.
Holy shit, I looked it up because I woke up with this word abnegation and I thought, what the hell is it? Do you know what it is? It's denying yourself. You give up yourself, you deny yourself. So I wrote, this programming is about abnegation of self, abnegation of responsibility, abnegation of adult maturity because you're behaving like a kid, abnegation of human rights, and it's a product of Governmind.
Perfect.
That little sentence she said to me.
Yep.
Cool.
But what a word, abnegation. It just popped. And I thought, I don't, let me look that up. Yeah.
I'm going to use it now. I think that's a great word.
Yeah.
Word. Yes. Yes.
Well, Chuck, a very interesting background behind you.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit more about that.
So, you know, since I've been tapping into the divine and they've, you know, tapped me on the head, they give me pictures now. And so then I try to attempt it. And so I, you know, I had the canvas was all ready. I found the paints that I was going to use and I was actually going to sculpt it first. And then once the sculpting was dry, I was going to paint over top of it. But my plaster was hard. And so I was like, oh, can't sculpt. So, but I didn't want to I was in that creative kind of mode. And so I thought, well, I'm just going to use my fingers. And so I started it because it was basically supposed to be, I'll try and get it out of the way. You know, something coming out of a vortex, right? You know, the Fibonacci sequence. I keep on seeing the Fibonacci sequence, but now I'm seeing it with symbols. So that's exciting. So now I have a new painting that I'm doing. So I started finger painting, and, you know, I always say when I paint, sometimes it goes from bad to worse, and it was really bad. And I thought, oh, wow, this looks like, you know, a kindergarten could have probably done a better job than this. And I take a picture of it because it was just so funny. And I threw it in my bedroom on the floor because I didn't want my cats leaving footprints on it. And as I was getting ready to go to work, I went, oh, right, I want to wipe that paint away. And so I just grabbed a whole bunch of plastic bags, you know, garbage bags or whatever, and went in there and just mushed it and, you know, was trying to pull the paint off. And then looked at my watch and went, I gotta go. And so I left it filled on top with all these plastic bags on top of, not even did. You know, so I always say that this was a true universe painting because, you know, my contribution was, you know, the 1-year-old, and I think even a 1-year-old could probably have done a better job. And then after that point, it was just whatever they decide. And it was literally me just crumpling it up and trying to smush it off. And when I came home at night, it was on my floor. And of course, I peeled off the plastic bags and stuff and threw those away and kind of just propped it up against the wall. Because again, I thought it was a hopeless cause. And then I kind of looked at it and I went, what am I seeing? Because, a lot of times with my paintings, if you turn them, different things come out. And the way it had been painted, that's how, when I was looking at it, I went, oh, that looks ugly. But when I put it up against my wall, I had flipped it. And that's when that face, you can kind of see the eye right there with the nose kind of going into my head. So it's the faces and the I always want to call them little fairies, are very, very tiny. So when you get up to it, you got to go really close, and it's kind of like, how did you paint that? And I'm like, oh no, wasn't me. It's the universe. It's the universe.
That's about as organic as you can get.
My last painting that I did, I threw coffee on it because I really hated it. I had all these bright colors and it just went to mud. And I'm like, what have you done? And literally I was trying to scrape the paint off and it wasn't coming off fast enough. And it was actually on January 1st. And I threw it out in the rain because I was hoping the rain would wash the paint. And that wasn't working fast enough. Outside with me was my half-drinking coffee cup. And I'm like, perfect. So I threw that at it. I'm like, wow, that's great. Look at all the paint came off. And so then I was just scooping up, rainwater, throwing it on it. And, and then I think a majority of the paint had come off. And so then I was able to kind of scrape it out. And again, toss it in the corner. And my girlfriend, when she came over, she's like, oh, your paints are out. What did you paint? And I'm like, oh God, it was horrible. And she went to go find it because literally I had just tossed it into the corner outside, probably was getting rained on still. And she's like, how do you do this? And I'm like, what are you talking about? She goes, look at this. And I'm like, oh, that's a dark painting.
Shelley, how does this part of your personality relate to a childhood memory? Is there any?
I'm going to show, that's why I was moving around and I've got a big wet stain on me because I spilt coffee on myself.
Oh dear.
I remembered I had some childhood photos somewhere. And so this is me as a kid getting ready for gymnastics. Can you believe that I am?
Can you bring it closer?
Yeah, there you go. Can you see that?
Up, up, up and over.
No, wrong way.
It's hard to see it.
Subtle.
There it is. There I am.
How old are you there?
I'm probably 8 because this picture, I was 11. So you can see I've always been smiling. And I think this picture, I was probably, where am I? Maybe 6. So, my early childhood memories, I was always smiling, and I've always been able to see, the light and be happy in any situation. And it's funny because for the longest time, if people asked me about my childhood, I couldn't remember anything because I was a very aware kid, and I had to shut it off so that I could fit in, not that I actually fit in because I was still that awkward kid. Like you, mother, making me the dresses and putting my hair in curlers and going to bed with those things in your head that hurt.
The spongy ones.
Yeah. And looking, like you're a 50-year-old because you've got these, waves, right? I think I might have tore that picture up because it was a bad picture. And it's funny. And so I didn't kind of reestablish my until I was in my mid 20s, actually, probably around 27. And I was saying to my friend, how unfortunate that I hadn't woken up before I got married, because, kind of when I woke up, it was kind of like, what have I done? I'm married to this man.
Oh boy.
Yeah. So, had I woken up before, I would have been like, no, let me go on with my life. But anyway, I got 2 great kids out of it. And so bit by bit, I've had my childhood come back to me. And, like I said, I always say it as karmic dues that I had. And, I was sexually abused when I was probably after 11. And, but but I came out of it a different kind of person opposed to being a victim. And I always say that I'm somebody now that could talk about it, because it was one of my truths that I kept to myself for such a long time. And then one day I finally spewed it out, tears, crying, and actually recognized that the person who had done the abuse, their life has been karmic since. So, and I also recognized that every time I saw them, I was always giving them guilt, right? So, I was maintaining that anger, not even being aware of it. But just actually from this conversation about going into your childhood made me have the before time, before, when I was always happy and stuff. And I realized that, that's when I was playing with the fairies and like you, my parents were never around. I remember following deer up the mountain, and apparently they do that because they're trying to, I've heard somewhere where they'll do that because it's a way of them pulling you up so that you will be the person killed instead of them, type thing. So I was like, I can get killed. I always knew I was protected.
The scapegoat.
Yeah, the scapegoat. Yeah. And so my childhood, when I recall my childhood, from the younger years, I was always out exploring, going to places, like I said, going up the mountain, and my house would be about that small. And, I'd say to my mom, I'm going for a hike, and she'd be like, okay, supper time is at blah, blah time. Right. And, and so I was going, and I remember I found.
Were you by yourself?
By myself, always by myself.
Wow.
But, I don't say I was by myself, because I know my guides were with me. I remember I came across these old pioneer cabins, and I spent all day playing in them and just discovering and what was here, and and I think about it now and I think, oh my God, I could have fallen through the floor, all these kind of crazy things, but I always knew I was protected. So yeah, it's interesting how now I'm getting those memories back, and I thank you for bringing that to me, because I was like, wow, yeah, right. I used to go out in the forest and play with the fairies all the time and go looking for them and climbing trees. And I remember when I went back to my, where we lived in the Okanagan, and me and the neighbor kid, we used to climb this rock face, right? And to us, this rock face would take us all day long, right? Because it was like so big. And, you go there now and you're like, oh my God, it's as tall as me. Like, so
Yes.
it's amazing how from a childhood everything is so grand and large. But I'm grateful that my guides have always been with me, even in that turmoil, and in a sense they helped to kind of remove some of the shame that I was going through and stuff. And that actually just came up last year. It was something that I wasn't even aware of, and I'm like, wow, there is shame put onto this, right? And so, thank you, universe, for letting that go. So, yeah, so that's why I am the way I am, just because, I've always been smiling. I've always, seen the light.
Wow.
Yeah.
Cool. I'm going to jump in on that because you said something kind of interesting too. A couple of things that related to my childhood as well. I agree that thinking back to childhood, things that may seem small or not overly insurmountable seemed the opposite as a kid, like even the slide at the school seemed like it was, ginormous, now you go back as an adult and all of a sudden, oh yeah, that's not so tall. So, perspective as well. But I was thinking about what I was going to get for a picture or what I wanted to share, and I kept putting it off, and I'd shared with Ida that the subject matter of this particular topic wasn't exciting me when I first heard it, and then last night when I finally forced myself out of my procrastination and started going through my albums, a few things hit me that first of all, how much I've really forgotten and let go of my childhood, and how little I remember too. And I think the one thing that stood out the most was how much I really don't remember a thing before the age of 7. It was like, it's all dark territory. It's like, I can see pictures. My mom did a great job of putting an album together, and she threw in a bunch of the, pre-7-year-old pictures, and none of them, not one, jogs any kind of a memory.
Wow.
And I'm fascinated by that in a way, and it even has a little bit of a scary feel to it as well, as to, maybe it's all biological, but it kind of feels like there might be something energetic there too. It's sort of like, why is it that I let that whole first 6.5 years go and can't, think of a thing about what happened then? And I remember hearing something about, and I don't even remember where this came from, but someone had said that it is possible for a human to actually have a change of souls, like while they're alive. There's a different being that kind of comes in, sort of, I'll take it from here kind of thing. And when I first heard it, something rang, like a bell rang or something. And I feel like my childhood had like 3 phases. There was the pre-7-year-old, which I remember none of. There was the elementary school period, which for me was from grade 1 to 7. And that was a great old time. I have, some good memories of times there. And then there was high school, and that was not so good for me. It wasn't something I really chose to remember, but I feel like it shaped my lifetime in many ways. So I'm going to share that one picture that I chose to share with you guys. So here it comes. I'm the one with the baby on the lap. If you can you see that, guys?
Yeah.
With the brown shorts?
I'm the one with the brown shorts. Yep.
Aw.
Adorable.
That's my brother, Randy. He's 10 years younger than I am. He just turned 50 at the end of 2020. And that actually, that reminded me that when I found out I was going to have a brother or sister, before I knew whether it was going to be a brother or sister, I knew that I wanted to have a sister because the young boy here on the right, Robbie, who's looking at the baby, my brother, he and his brother, who was my age, Herman, they were always fighting, like just verbally abusing and hitting each other, and all that kind of stuff. I really noticed how much I disliked that. And I said, that's why I don't want a brother. So in a lot of ways, I was disappointed when I had my brother, and I feel a certain amount of guilt looking back in a way that I felt like I kind of shunned my brother a little bit. And, that feeling has changed now, but, I feel bad that looking back that I had felt that way. But, as Ida and I were saying just before we started the recording, sometimes you have those dark experiences, those dark times, those times maybe you're regretful about or whatever. They may not seem like the best thing at the time or even in retrospect, but those things bring you something. They show you something. So that was kind of cool.
Can I ask William a question?
Yeah.
Or do you want me to wait?
I'll just finish describing who else is in the picture, and then I'll let you definitely ask me a question. You have a brother and sister here on the left, Angela and her brother Darren. Darren was my age. Angela was a couple of years younger. I didn't play with John too much. John Dreyer is the one at the back, but he had a wonderful laugh. It was pretty cool. He was just always laughing, it seemed like. This is my good-looking cousin from Calgary, Alberta. He still lives in Calgary. His name is Rick, and he did some bodybuilding in his probably mid-20s, early 30s, and now he's big like bull. He's very strong. Actually, I think he works for some kind of a security outfit, like Brinks, dealing with cash and stuff like that. And then, of course, there was Robbie there and myself and my brother. So we were sitting in front of the house here in my small town of Golden, BC. And many, many years ago, the house I lived in my entire youth, I'd spent the first 20 of my first 23 years in that house. The rest of the time was in Mount Royal College in Calgary and at my aunt's place where I stayed when I was in college. So that was a summation of my history. You had a question for me, Ivan.
I did. So were you the youngest until Robbie came?
Robbie wasn't my brother. He was Herman's brother. So they were friends.
No, this little guy.
The little guy wasn't me. That's my brother, Randy. I was
Yeah,
the
Randy, sorry. Were you the youngest until Randy came along?
I was the only, and I was the oldest until Randy came along.
Okay, and how old are you in this picture?
I would say probably, well, Randy was 10 years, so I must have been at least 11.
Yeah.
Okay,
Oh.
so how old do you think Randy is there? Maybe a year or under?
I think probably 10, 11 months, something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that blows one of the theories I had.
Oh.
So what I was going to say about the lack of memory, in my world, the age of 7 psychologically and developmentally is the age of reason. So where children begin to be able to sort things out, they can do the A plus B equals C in terms of problems, in terms of looking at the world. So developmentally, it's possible that until 7, and I hear this from, I have a couple that I'm working with their 2 boys, and they're 5 and 6 right now. And I said, it's coming, 7 is coming, you know, because they're driving her crazy. So sometimes nothing clicks to a kid before the age of reason, which is 7. The other thing I was going to say is, there's pros and cons. Sometimes they say a kid doesn't remember because of trauma, right?
Yeah.
So when trauma happens, kids dissociate, and dissociate means they leave their body and their mind in order to survive the trauma, because the trauma is too overwhelming in their central nervous system.
Yeah.
So those memories you weren't even present in order to survive the trauma, right? So recall of those is hard. So some people would say that's why you don't remember. There's maybe some trauma there. And when I say trauma, people think trauma is an event, but it's not. It's how the child receives, or the adult receives, the thing that's happening to them in their central nervous system. So if you're if you're a highly sensitive child, and I put you in a group of 7 kids that witness an event, because you're highly sensitive, it's possible that you perceived that event or received that event as a trauma, and maybe the other 5 kids didn't. Do you know what I mean? So they talk about trauma wiping out memories in childhood. The other thing is, there's another theory that says a child remembers, especially the younger years, events like that were out of the ordinary. You know, something, if something was so routine in their life, it's something that was out of the ordinary and not a routine that they're more likely to remember. So you can say it's an uneventful childhood, maybe, right? There's a lot of different theories about why the lack of memory. The other one that I was going to talk about was, when you're an only child before the last child comes, you have all of your parents' attention, if they're able to give it to you, right? Hopefully they are. But you know, some can't for whatever reason. So when the new baby comes, all of a sudden your placement in the family of being the center of the parent's universe is gone. And so you said 10. I was thinking, well, maybe you lost your center. I thought maybe you were 7 in that picture, and maybe you lost your center when the new baby came in. And it was like, I had people seeing me, witnessing me, you know, and I knew I was seen and heard, but when that baby came, I lost it all. So my memory, anyway, so those are a couple of theories.
Yeah.
I don't know what sticks.
You said some things there that that did ring some bells for me, although not directly to the points you were saying, but it just some of the things you said within each of the different theories that kind of combine to make a very interesting insight. First of all, my dad was having problems with his eyesight. And he kept having one of the blood vessels, a major blood vessel in one of his retina, in one of his eyes, kept bursting. And every time they would burst, they would, would screen out his vision. So, and they didn't know how to control it. They didn't know what to do. And so my dad was in the middle of, we're back in the time, of course, when the men were supposedly the providers, the mom were the housekeepers, and that kind of thing. Well, they're immigrants from a different country. They came with nothing, pretty much. They were just getting settled, although they moved into a new house fairly well. By the time I was 2, it was a new house, which they made with their own hands too, which was kind of cool. But my dad's vision started to have problems. And so he started to be away a lot, not only from working, but also he would go to Vancouver, and from Golden to Vancouver at that time, well, it still is a long ways, like 10-hour drive or something.
Wow.
Across the province. And so my dad had to go to Vancouver to do things, laser treatment for his eyes and the retina, and try to get the dried blood out of his eyes, basically, so he could see again. But they needed to figure out a way to how to stop it. So as a child, there weren't a lot of events that occurred, certainly prior to the age of 7. But what I did end up spending a lot of time was alone. And I remember my mom very recently, when I talked about childhood, I just said, what was I like as a kid? What was going on? She said, well, you were a very quiet child. You kind of were on your own a lot, but you definitely missed your dad. You definitely, wanted him to be around, and he wasn't around very much. He couldn't be because of all the other challenges he was facing. So that definitely was true. And fortunately, he got through that. And, it was, speaking of a dark thing in your life leading to something much brighter, it led him into the whole world of nutrition and health foods and all of that he started his own store in our small town. That was a part health food store, part deli, part corner grocery store, which I ended up working at. So by the time I was 12, 13-ish, I started working there, and my relationship in the family changed. And my brother came around, and all of a sudden I came from being the only one to the designated babysitter, employee, etc. And
oh my goodness.
I wasn't ready for it. I wasn't.
No, who would be at that age?
And my mom's expectations were pretty high, as far as being an example for the other kids. And so she had her own frustrations. So I won't go into their lives, but there was definitely some challenges there. So that was an interesting little trip down memory lane, definitely. And I'm not sure if I'm seeing Shelley's hand there, or if Randy wants to jump in. But Shelley waved, so I'm going to call on Shelley and get ready to pass after that.
So I'm going to say that great story, and it brought back, what was the earliest childhood memory that I could think of. And I recognize that that I probably have before 3, remember, because I had a Siamese cat named Sam, and that cat was my cat. We did everything together. And I remember going to the end of our walk, because we had a farm, because we lived in Alberta. And I always say, thank you, Dad, for moving me from the farm when I was 4, because I'm not, a farm girl. I'm definitely a city girl. But my siblings aren't. And so, when you talk about how your brother and you are 10 years apart, well, my siblings, my brothers, they're probably 10 years older, and my sister is 6 years older. So I was always by myself. And I also recall my mom made this stew that was the best, and she never made it again. And we never had it when we lived in the Okanagan. I remember every time I go, oh, stew, and it just never tasted the same. And I would always make forts. So I was always, covering up my mom's table with sheets and stuff. And being Ukrainian, she would be yelling at me, "Shut the rubbish," and that's the only word I know in Ukrainian. And what it means is, "What are you doing?" Right? And I'm like, "Nothing, nothing." Right? And I had 2 dogs, and one was called Doggy, and it was a German Shepherd with missing a leg, had been hit by a bus. But it's interesting because it made me think, like, my sister always throughout our life, and still today, exhibits the baby child syndrome. And I actually exhibit the only child syndrome, because my siblings were never around. I was always out, and my mother, was doing whatever she was doing. So I became that independent person. And I remember we also had wild cats on our farm, and I was always trying to, bring them into the house, and I would be covered in scratches. But the other day I was on a Zoom meeting with these people who are talking about the Palladians, and they have this bit of a belief that we have what's called walk-ins. And sometimes it's a soul contract that we had with somebody. So they've walked in at a certain point, and there still is perhaps an energetic thread that you have with them, or that soul or whatever that came into you. And that a lot of ailments are because of these walk-ins. So that's what I needed to say about that. Anyway, Randy.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, good stuff. I'm actually glad I went last, because it really brought out a lot of things to me. Like, we use the word programming quite a bit, and then as soon as we ask each other what our memories are, and we come up with a memory, we're remembering our own program, right? Mm-hmm. So as much as each of you guys talked about being alone a fair bit and independent, and I was the same way. And where are we now? Not wearing fucking masks and walking around like a bunch of zombies. Like we're still a bunch of independent cusses, right? But it's beautiful to hear your stories about that. I was, my childhood was quite alone. Like I spent a lot of time outside and fooling around, creating my own little reality, like any normal kid, I think. But well, I don't know, maybe since our generation, or even the last 30-40 years, there's a lot more that don't get outside much and just kind of get programmed by TV and video stuff, but even at a young age. So it's kind of sad. But I guess I think that we as a bunch of independent cusses have a leadership role now for humanity as we move into this next phase, which is coming, and there's no doubt about that. But I'll share my picture now, because I just said, I got to do something. I said, I don't have any pictures. She said, well, draw something. You're very creative. So this will show you how artistic I am. And I want to tell you, like, I autographed this, because if I lose it, somebody could pick this up and sell it for, like, I'm thinking hundreds of thousands of dollars. But because I know what the autograph is, and to put UCC 1-308 behind my autograph, which is on my passport and my driver's license and everything else, so that I am not responsible for this thing called debt. That's what you do, right? So here it is. You can kind of see it on the bottom. And you can see how amazing I am at artwork, like I just think that that's just priceless myself.
It's good.
It is.
No, it's not.
No, because I have pictures on my wall from my kids that I could never do. You got into your childhood, so that's awesome. You should keep it. Frame it.
Okay. Okay, so what it is me as the little guy, and I'm like a stick person in a marshmallow suit, like your Michelin man. And that's kind of how I felt. I was like and then I was out in space. I should have put some stars in, but I don't know if stars are actually in space. I'm not really a fan of space in the first place. But the other character in this is Jesus Christ. You can see by the beard it's not a female, right? And he would reach out to me. So what this was a repetitive dream that I had, because I had a lot of pain as a child. I have this thing that I was born with called a hemangioma. It's a big mass of extra blood vessels on my ass, like Gorbachev had one on his forehead, Well, this thing was huge. It was like bigger than my hand is, right? And it would rupture whenever I fell and stuff like that. And the pain was just like hitting your thumb, and then that blood was rushing through your and that kind of throbbing. So this thing on my ass would do that all the time, and I'd be in this horrible pain, and I'd have this same repetitive dream where I was like this little stick person with, protected by this bubble, scared as hell because of this pain. And then Jesus, because I was a little altar boy and whatnot, or not altar boy at that age, but grew into that. But we went to church, so Jesus was the good guy, and he'd just say, "Don't worry about it. Here, take my hand. You'll be fine." So that was my repetitive dream from that, where this piece of art came from. And I don't think I'm going to frame it, Shelley. Like, it's like it is what it is. But I've still got the memory. But that kind of speaks to the idea of programming, right? So I programmed myself, to take pain. Okay, a lot of it. Like these teeth are
Right.
reminiscent of that, and I just took it myself, and I was like, I don't give a shit. I'll take anything. And when I got to my adult years, I kept trying and working my way through things. And what else can you throw at me? Like, I can take fucking anything. It doesn't matter. And so I think that's the programming that I've got in my life, and it came from that pain as a child that I just wanted to overcome myself. I've always been competitive in nature, but only myself. Like, I never really got into competitive sports much or anything, but I'll compete with myself like you wouldn't believe. Like, I just, I still walk like 15 kilometers a day, and I clock it, like, I got to compete with myself and make myself better and stuff like that in every aspect of life. So I guess that's what I wanted to share today with you guys. It's just, it's a little different story, and we all have our own, but I think I saw quite a bit of commonality in the independence side, and that's, pretty obvious now, where we don't comply with these governed mind rules and that looniverse legal jurisdiction, which is, we all speak of it and think of it in our own ways, but our authenticity has obviously stayed with us, and was programmed either by ourselves or a little bit of our upbringing. I don't think that there's anybody to blame for it, other than taking responsibility as a bunch of independent little fuckers ourselves. I think, like, of course our families have a little bit of something to do with it, but it's mostly us. We're mostly creating our own reality from childhood on, and maybe from that age of 7. I don't know what age. I do remember young days and stuff like that, but my memories of that are beautiful. And I it was a lot of outside creation on my own, like you guys have shared, the rock climbing that Shelley did, and your trips into the bush and out in the snowstorm and things like that. Those are my favorite memories. I don't have many memories of movies or anything like that. It's just natural kind of stuff. So there you go.
So can I say that, firstly, when I've seen you in your abode, wherever you end up, I see bare walls. So I'm going to suggest that you place your artwork on one of your bare walls.
Color it.
Color it.
Add some color to it. Add some landscape. Have fun with it.
I see in that picture. Can you show that picture again for a second?
Oh, I threw it away. It's on the bottom.
No! Oh.
Randy.
It's right here.
Okay. So
Okay.
what I noticed, can you show me what is Jesus standing on there?
Oh, that.
He's standing on my autograph.
Oh, on your autograph. Okay.
Yeah.
And so the only
That wasn't really anything significant. I just autographed it after. So Jesus was floating around like I was.
I noticed how big he is and how you must have felt so small in his presence.
Yeah.
And he only has one hand that I can see. You didn't draw any other hand or feet. So, there, I don't see feet. Are there feet and another hand? No.
No, just sticks.
So you know what the interesting part is? I can tell you're a guy who doesn't believe in the crucifixion.
Hell no.
Do you see what you drew? None of the other parts of like what he's known for, the hands with the holes and the feet. So it is so obvious from that picture that you're not into the whole crucifixion Christ thing. That you didn't, yeah, that's what I saw.
Oh God, Ida, you know, Pontius Pilate was picking on him, and the Jews were the ones that said, you know, crucify him, crucify him.
Yeah.
But Pontius Pilate's wife, she kind of thought he was cute, right? So she said,
Yes.
"Come on, Pontius, you smarten up. Leave him alone, you big fucking bully." So he let him hang him up there because he wanted to satisfy the Jews, and then, or the not the Jews, but you know those weirdos that were the leaders of the Jews. And then he said, "Well, just roll that rock back, let him go," and that was all it was.
Yes. Yes.
That's
Yes.
my
Okay, but I grew up Roman Catholic. They put him on the friggin' cross, okay? With the spear in the side and the holes in the hands and feet. What I want to ask you is, even when you drew yourself and his hand there, you still didn't draw yourself connected to his hand. Like you're still separate in your own little bubble from him.
Yeah.
Did you see that?
I think I noticed that, and I think that's the way it was. He was reaching out, but I never did touch his hand, you know, in that dream. And that I was portraying the dream, right? Where
Okay.
we were both floating in space, and he was reaching out and saying, "Don't worry about it, just come with me." And I'd reach up, and then I'd kind of wake up, or mother would come with a wet cloth and put it on my forehead or something, you know.
Is that where you went when you were in a lot of pain?
Yeah, every time. It was repetitive. I dreamed that same dream hundreds of times, I'll bet you. I bet you
Wow.
hundreds of times. It was just amazing.
So did you see him back then as an anthropomorphic being then?
No, just saw him as I don't know, like he was there, another human to come and help me out
Yeah.
and get me through it and just say, "Here, just hold my hand. It's fine."
That must have been scary as a kid that you had to go outside of your own, like the humans that were there. You had to create one in your imagination to help you get through that or rescue or save, you know, because the humans couldn't. They couldn't take away the pain.
Yeah, I think that's probably a good summation. Like, I mean, it was impossible. You couldn't take away that pain. Like I took some pills and stuff like that as I got older, but even that didn't help. It was just like
It must have been scary. I just think of a little kid with this enormous amount of pain, and no one can take it away, and there's really no explanation, and it just keeps happening. And then you have to watch how you move and how you fall, and it must have been just not great.
Pretty nasty. And I mean, I was 33, and I found the doctor that I was in the hospital at 33 from another rupture, and I was just in pain. And this doctor came in and he said, "I've taken those off before." And I said, "Oh, really?" I said, so he was from Arkansas. Sam Cox, his name was, and he took it off. It killed me. That's when I died because I bled out after the operation, but I came back to life, and then it was all good after that. And now I've still, you know, I've got the scars, and there's a
Do you
little
have
bit
the
of
pain still?
not much at all. Like there's a lot of, you know, scar tissue and stuff. I call it my shark bite if anybody sees my ass, but not very many people see my ass, Ida.
Really? Define many.
Hey, never mind.
Yeah, exactly.
That's my sex therapy side. We're not going there today.
Okay. Well, these stories, you know, it's kind of neat to revisit, like you said, William. It made you look through like albums and think about things, and I love doing that. Going through albums of photos and remembering. I get a kick out of that. If I ever come to your houses, I want to sit down with you and look at all the photos in your photo albums.
Yeah,
That's what I want to do.
I still have a bunch, but they're not with me right now. I got a bunch of photos.
Are they at your sister's?
Yes.
Okay.
Interesting, Ida, that I thought I saw an interesting correlation on Randy's side that I definitely want to share. But also to your point about albums and, you know, you kind of like looking at that thing. It again, when you first brought the subject to mind to Randy and me through email, my first reaction was, oh, I don't want to go back and look at my past. That's my past. I think, no, forget about it. Like, I'm looking for the future. You know, I'm looking, you know, the best thing to be is in the now and just enjoy it as each moment as you go along. But yeah, I had very little interest in looking at the past, and yet by looking through that album, it definitely brought some insights. So that was, you know, fascinating to me. So I thank you for that interesting trip down memory lane and then some, because there was something else attached to it too. And perhaps an exercise for anyone doing this, you know, is if you haven't looked at your childhood pictures in a while, maybe give yourself an afternoon or some, you know, and go through some of the pictures and see what it brings up. See if it brings up anything more than just a memory of something. It certainly did for me. So who knows what it might bring for others. Randy, I had to say the other thing that was kind of cool for me is just a moment ago when you were, you know, talking about the remove. I don't know. I forgot what the name of that blood mark is, but when you had it removed and then you had that repercussion of bleeding out and you actually died on the table. To me, is an interesting correlation. What is the story of Jesus, at least from the Catholic perspective, as he died and came back to life? So it's no wonder he was your hero, or you were connected to him, because that was part of your journey.
Pretty weird, eh? And
Yeah.
I mean, fuck, I was 33 years old too, so it's pretty fucking weird story, I'll tell you.
Absolutely. Correlations are quite fascinating.
You're not the one they've been talking about, are you?
I might be.
The return of JC.
I heard Jesus or Christ was a cowboy, so I don't know, maybe.
And he got the white hat. You can't fault the white hat, you know.
Well, that was fun, you guys.
Shelley.
I was just going to say about when she talked about photo albums too. And I had a moment there of kind of sadness, because we're kind of the last generation that, you know, and my kids, maybe if I made them a photo album, but really, you know, it's all on the computer now. And it's not, there's something about holding that picture and, you know, maybe you've written something behind it, like you wrote, you know, ugly. And you know, it's having also that memory to go with it, right? So it's unfortunate, you know, and that would maybe say, hey, you know, you guys start making photo albums, you know, like start doing those photo books again or something, you know, because they were popular for a while, but they kind of went their way. But yeah, I've enjoyed for having my memories and having new ones come to me and go, oh yeah. So thank you.
Cool.
Yeah, this might have been a great opportunity to start a retro trend where everyone can start printing their digital pictures and creating albums from them.
Yeah.
Ooh, that would be neat.
Well, you know, put it out there. So the universe has it now. The ether has it. So other people are going to start thinking about it.
Very good.
Very good. Universe.
See, we're reborning it.
Yeah,
we're reborning it. There you started that.
Rebirthing.
All right, guys, unless anyone has any final thoughts or words or comments they want to share.
With abundance, sovereignty, health, love, and euphoria from the gang.
Thank you, Randy. Thank you all.
Thank you. Bye, guys.
Thank you, guys.
See you guys.
Love you.
Love you.
Bye.
Now.
Bye.